Welcome to another edition of Dakota Boys Talk Comics? What?
Comics? What? That's not the name of the show.
Oh, man. We're all about breaking. Dakota, our show, if I could tell anybody, like, just boil your show down to like a one-sentence mission statement, it would be, we're here to break barriers. We're here to just break new ground, Dakota.
Oh, okay.
Nobody talks comics.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
I was gonna say, does that mean one day I just straight up narrate The House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe?
You could.
It would be okay.
I
with
think
it.
more on theme for where we're at right now would be House of M. But
Oh, sure.
But yeah, we had done a previous one and we teased that we would come back to this, and here we are.
Yes, this is Dakota Boys Talk Comics 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo. This time it's personal.
That's right.
And it kind of is, because the comic series we were talking about this time is DCeased.
Kind of a clumsy title, like if we're being honest here.
It is.
Isn't
It doesn't. I mean, I understand why they did it. It in one sense it's clever, but in another sense, they kind of had to commit to a title like this though, because they couldn't do DC Zombies.
That would just sound, I don't know, like,
because there was already Marvel Zombies, and then in a sense, DCeased does kind of roll off the tongue a little bit better than DC Zombies.
yeah. And DC kind of already interestingly enough, did a zombie storyline a while ago. It was called The Blackest Night, the Green Lantern story. Which that also involved dead characters coming back to wreak havoc. And they all had really cool costumes, by the way. If you haven't seen any artwork for that storyline, check it out. I actually own a Martian Manhunter figurine from that.
Do you really?
Oh, it's sweet. It is so sweet. His costume's like shredded.
Well, they have to be. I think every superhero costume should always be shredded. That's why Zack Snyder is the one who always gets it right. Because his characters are shredded.
Oh boy, you just
Dakota. Where do we begin with this?
Probably from the start. It actually
Start at the beginning.
This story actually starts at the end of a fight. It's not like the beginning of some big showdown.
Mm-hmm.
And it involves our favorite new god, aka Darkseid.
Yeah, is he one of the ones they call the new gods?
Yeah, his whole like he's part of the whole new god thing.
Yeah, so you kind of right. You do. You kind of start kind of mid to end fight with Darkseid, and I think the first thing off the bat here's the two things I liked about. I liked that the pages weren't glossy.
Very much so, yes.
I think it helped the artwork pop a little better, having it not be like that. And I also liked how this artwork that is in it has like a modern classical feel. It's like a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's some comics you could just look at and you could just tell what eras they're from. Like, you know, you have the one from the late 80s where just like every superhero has like a 12-pack, not a 6-pack, a 12-pack. Yeah. And they have
just muscles coming out of muscles.
It's like their muscles have muscles. And every female superhero has like just a tiny waist, large hips, and just a very large bust line.
Yeah. And there is that a little bit in this. There is some pretty decent bust lines in this. And I'm not even just talking about the women. But yeah, so we kind of cut to Apocalypse pretty early on. And kind of the catalyst of this whole DCeased event kind of starts with wow, it's gone. There it is. Cyborg. It was weird. I was like blanking on his name. Like Robot Man, which I think is like the Doom Patrol guy.
Yes.
Yeah. It kind of starts with I just blanked on his name again. That's so weird.
Cyborg?
Cyborg getting captured by Darkseid, and then I'm trying to remember who that dude is.
DCeased?
I'm so bad with names. DCeased.
Who looks incredibly creepy in this comic.
Just kind of gross, like overlapping teeth or something.
Yeah. Anyone here that's looking forward to the Snyder Cut, you actually be seeing him in live action soon.
Yeah.
He's going to have a small part in there.
Yeah. Played by, no, I have no idea. I'm just, I didn't know where I was going with that. But yeah, so Dakota, why don't you just kind of walk us through just kind of the events of this and maybe kind of that setup there.
Well, I don't want to really spoil this comic just because I actually really enjoyed it. And anyone who's listening to this, I really hope you get out there and read it too. But Darkseid is kind of obsessed with this thing called the anti-life equation. And he's obsessed with it because getting a hold of it will apparently allow him to basically control all life in the universe. And he's constantly questing to try to find this thing out. Well, through some experimentation with Cyborg, he unfortunately kind of just opens up Pandora's box.
Probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I don't even know if you could say he created it, or was it Cyborg that created this virus? But it
was kind of like accidentally bred through Cyborg is kind of how it went, because it's like it's not a traditional virus because you get it digitally. Like it's kind of like, so I think the idea was that it was like if a computer virus could actually if you could get the virus of a computer, because it comes through the internet, is how people are getting it, through looking at screens.
Yeah, it spreads pretty quickly. Cyborg manages to get back to Earth, and because apparently he's always running on Wi-Fi,
who knew?
uploads this virus to the internet, and because everyone basically is carrying a small computer in their pockets, so many people are infected with this.
Yeah,
with it right away.
Yeah, and I think if you look at this is on the back cover, so a spoiler, but it's like basically 600 million people, more or less simultaneously or within minutes, have it, and immediately just lose their mind into violent psycho monster zombies. They are the DCeased. And I guess kind of from there, you just kind of follow through you follow through the stories you'd kind of expect. The superheroes who don't have it, trying to figure out how it started and what they need to do. And I think a couple of things that I enjoyed about this was that there was almost like a brutal entertainment to it, in that you never, like issue to issue, you never knew which of your favorite superheroes was going to all of a sudden just become a terrible zombie. And I think what's cool about that is, and we'll kind of walk through without spoiling, but ones I was expecting to kind of be like our carry through heroes were like pretty quickly out of the picture. And then there was some of the issues that were just kind of these fun little one-off stories where that particular hero was just in that one. There was a few where they were just in that one issue, and you kind of see where they're at with it and what's going on. And so it kind of made it kind of a fun, dare I say, romp through this whole kind of pandemic-y issue that was happening.
Yeah, unlike most comic book storylines, this one doesn't come with a lot of baggage.
No.
It's pretty easy to get into. Like, you don't need to know what's going on with Aquaman or Green Lantern.
No, I would say pretty much if you kind of know what that person looks like and understand that they're a thing, you could pretty much bounce into this.
I think just to kind of forewarn people, it does get pretty dark.
Oh, well, yeah, and it's like, in some parts, heartbreakingly violent.
Yeah, I don't, without spoiling anything, the Bat family kind of tears itself apart in a sense. And
Yeah,
that was hard for me to kind of read because being a huge Batman fan, and not just a Batman fan, like Alfred, Nightwing, the kind of various Robins we've gotten throughout the years. It's hard to watch them turn into these monsters.
yeah,
And
and then kind of at this point in the storyline they're working with, they have kids. You know, like Batman and Superman have these children, and so you're kind of seeing where they fit into this whole issue and how that plays out for them too. And so, yeah, it is kind of, and then you kind of get to play with certain characters maybe you wouldn't even think of, like Constantine and Booster Gold and stuff like that. And so it's kind of fun how it just kind of, like I said, kind of romps through the DC world, and you
I,
just kind of go along.
yeah, there's even some very minor characters even get moments in the story. Amanda Waller from the Suicide Squad comic book shows up. Um, the Atom turns is in there, kind of probably the most. I never thought like to even think about this, but this is a man that could shrink down to the size of an atom, and
Yeah.
he's running around just causing chaos essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the little character arc of John Constantine, kind of in that part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's kind of become more mainstream because I always think of him from the like the Hellblazer comics where he was in the DC continuity, but at the same time he operated kind of on the outskirts of everything.
Sure.
Like, you're never gonna see him and Batman teaming up to like solve a case or something like that. But
What helped him go mainstream? Was it Justice League Dark, or was it Keanu Reeves, or what was it that kind of boosted him?
oh, well, for the longest time they wanted to make a movie, and then we got one with Keanu Reeves, and I think it's just he's a really good character, not necessarily a good person,
No, but
but
you're right. Yeah, I think the fact that he does have the baggage and, dare I say, demons that he does have kind of make him an interesting
yeah,
character to play with.
it's kind of, I don't know, like even by Batman standards, he's a bleak character.
Yeah.
But I mean, having a character like that just, I think, will just like give any story a shot in the arm, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, people were fans of him for the longest time, and it was only a matter of time before he worked his way into being more mainstream. He's kind of up there with Doctor Fate and Zatanna as far as DC level magic users are. Some people have argued that he's actually more powerful than them. Anyone who saw the Justice League Dark Side Apocalypse War, he actually resurrected himself in that. He died, was killed by Trigon. If anyone knows who Trigon is, that's Raven's father from the Teen Titans. And he was able to resurrect himself, which is like, if that's not power, I don't know what is.
It's kind of a big deal.
Like, you're basically immortal at that point, right?
I mean, if you can keep doing that, it's more or less the definition.
I'm going to be honest with you. He left heaven and Zatanna behind. I would have stayed. Just saying. I would have been like, hey, I did the best I could. They got me.
Yeah. Zatanna is another interesting figure where it was like, what's caused her to gain popularity? Just because she, I mean, she's kind of interesting in one sense, but in another sense, like when you actually kind of think about what she is, it kind of like when you think about what she looks like and what she does, it's almost kind of silly. But I guess she is really powerful with her magic, and so that's probably what helps. Because in some ways, it feels like she's a Gambit sort of character.
I felt like it was that Justice League animated show that kind of helped her gain popularity.
Oh, okay.
She was in that, and
Because has she had many of her own comics, or is she more just in other people's?
she actually has. She has had her own run of comics, oddly enough.
Hmm. I suppose most of them have at this point at least had one run.
Yeah, I'm trying to. She's kind of like, I don't know. You may not know who I'm about to reference here. Dead Man. For a while there, she was kind of on his level of notoriety, not notoriety, but his level of fame, where it's like, oh, really interesting character, but not many people. And interesting enough, I guess Peacemaker was kind of on that same level, and then John Cena portrayed him, and now he's getting his own freaking TV show. So I mean, if Peacemaker could make it, anyone could make it.
And we don't even know if John Cena is good at playing him yet because the movie hasn't even come out.
I'm gonna be honest with you. When I saw his costume for that Suicide Squad movie, I kind of chuckled a little bit.
He looks ridiculous.
But I feel like he's gonna be such a serious character.
Oh my gosh. He just like that helmet. I think part of it is that John Cena's torso, like shoulders and arms, are gigantic. And so he just looks like he's wearing this tiny little helmet on the top of all of it.
I always thought he looked like if G.I. Joe came to life.
Yeah, like for the most part, John Cena does kind of have like that G.I. Joe kind of look to him. So,
like people have said, of all the actresses, why can't I remember her name? The lady that plays Harley Quinn,
Margot Robbie.
Yeah, people have kind of said, oh, if Barbie was like a real person, that'd be her. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about things like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've completely gone off the rails.
That's all right. What are you going to do? I would say we're kind of on theme because this book really goes off the rails, but in like, not in the sense where it like loses plot and story, just in the sense where it was just like, you don't know what's going to happen page to page.
Yeah, the ending, I think, it's kind of a downer ending, but I honestly did not expect the story to take the turns.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the thing when it got down to kind of the. Well, I mean, I did. I think you did too. Probably read it in like the full issues volume.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, the first volume, because there are going to be more stories set in this world.
Yeah,
one's coming out here. One just wrapped up, and apparently there will be more. Which I'm kind of stoked about because I don't want to spoil anything here, but there's kind of a heavy DC character that gets turned, and we still haven't seen what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just kind of like all of a sudden there's just kind of these few big moments that happen near the end, and then it's like, oh, that's the last page. The rest of this book is just variant covers, and it just kind of does. And so it kind of leaves on this hanging, and yet it still is kind of still its own story. And it's heavy and dour in one sense, but at the same time, you're like, wow, that was quite the, I mean, if you just take it as the ride that it is, holy cow. Yeah. It's got a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And the kind of selling point for this is there's no going back. The story's not going to end on, a happy note. Like things happen in the story and they're basically that's it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing you're realizing. It's like, there isn't going to be like a DCeased end game, is there? Where it's like they just reverse everything through. It's like, you're trying to understand how some of this will impact going forward. Now, obviously, DC and Marvel, they have these things where there's like, they have 4 different storylines for these superheroes all going at the same time. But, as far as this storyline is like, it seems like this is leading toward an end, but at the same, for some of the heroes.
Yeah.
And yet, there's a possibility of some hope, when you're seeing what this sequel one could be. But yeah, and like I was saying on top of that, I think, the other thing that this book really has going for it is just the outstanding artwork. Even though some of the some of the pages have images you're sad are happening. It's still outstanding artwork throughout. And so, I mean, that always helps. Because I think that's always been my struggle with, like, when I've looked in some Frank Miller's, is I really have trouble attaching to his artwork.
Yeah, his artwork's an acquired taste.
You know, yeah, and that's the thing. I understand why people like it, you know, but it's just like I have trouble really staying in it, I guess would be the best way. And I'm okay with like artistic choices or whatever, but it's just like I did kind of appreciate just here I just flipped it open and there's some like one of the brutal moments that happens is right on the page, but yeah, it's just I don't know, just on top of that I just think the artwork is great. I'm trying to remember who even did the other. See, Tom Taylor wrote it, and then is Trevor Hairsine. He must be one of the artists on it, which I'm not familiar with him, I guess. Let's see. Here we go. Here's our artist, Trevor Hairsine, who did Red Hood and the Outlaws, and Stefano Guadiano, who apparently did some work on The Walking Dead. So that makes sense. Get an artist who worked on Walking Dead. Yeah, so I think between Tom Taylor just putting together, like, you know, finding an interesting way to kind of go at this. Because here's the deal with zombies. They're kind of becoming the new vampires. They're getting maybe a little overdone.
Yeah, and you could have made that argument about 5 years ago and it'd still be just as relevant.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, if there's an interesting story to be told, and to go to the Walking Dead TV show, you know, it's kind of what happened there. It's like it started really tight, and then it just seems like, you know, you got to like some of these characters, but there's just this point where you don't care anymore, you know, and it just kind of like, whatever. This just feels like another episode, and then maybe there's gonna be some zombie things, and you don't care. But yeah, it's just like anything. It always goes back to story. You know, what's the story here? And I think this one, with the things it did and kind of where it ends, it draws you into this story. And then, of course, like we were talking about, the artwork helps with that. To where, yeah, I mean, it just ends up being like a fun ride, like fun in terms of what it is. You know, taking that for what it is.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
So let's see, Dakota, out of let's do this one on a 5, like 5 being the best.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something like out of 5 dead Robins. Or
I was
something.
I was gonna say I was gonna go more morbid. I was gonna say out of 5 brains. You know, zombies are known for eating brains.
Out of 5 planet Earths, maybe. I don't know.
Out of yeah. Out of 5 devastating viruses.
Oh.
How many viruses would you give DCeased?
You know what? I'm gonna go all in and just say 5.
Okay, giving it a 5 out of 5. I'm gonna give it a solid 4.
You sure about that?
I am sure about that.
Just thought I'd ask.
I am sure about that. Because I mean, it was. I mean, I really did enjoy it. But it is kind of one of those things where I am curious where they're gonna go now, and maybe that'll help me with some of it too. But yeah, I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where anyone could read this as long as you have a certain level of familiarity with just who these people are. I mean, and that's just like, oh, I've seen a picture. That person is called Superman. I mean, you don't really need to know a whole lot of backstory for this to work. And so I think if that shouldn't hold you back from when you read this. The only thing that could maybe hold you back is if you're not the biggest. If zombie things just annoy you, you're gonna hate this. But I would say otherwise, yeah, it's definitely fun in its own sort of way. Kind of a fun ride. So
Yeah, and the good thing about this is there's no. I guess there's no. You don't really have to like research and dig into like, oh, well, this was happening at that same time. No, it just
yeah,
you just pick it up and start reading it and just go along. It's there's sequels coming out to this, obviously, but it stands on its own. And yeah, it's just a really intriguing take on, because like Steven said, I feel like at this point in time, zombies have been done to death. And it's like, oh, well, why would you even try to make DC zombies a thing?
Yeah, and like, oh, there's already, like Marvel zombies has been pushed so hard over the past few years, and it just feels like they're riding the coattails, but they made it their own.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing here. And the writer, this Tom Taylor, I noticed he's the one who wrote Injustice, and I know that was another thing where it was like a really distinct take on the superheroes. And so that must be just something he likes to do, because I think that is what helps me respect this. It's just like they did things where it's like, okay, we're committed. I mean, like some of these people they're killing, it's like, some of the people there. In fact, there's a few frames in it. I think I snapped it and sent it to Dakota. I took a picture of it, sent it to Dakota. It made me laugh. Where it was like some of the people they usually rely on in these situations, they don't have.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of interesting how even within that world they're pointing that out too. Like, well, usually we ask this person about that, but we can't. And so that was kind of fun how they did that a little bit too. So yeah, well, we hope you enjoyed this episode where we went back and talked comics. What? Well, let's call it that, I guess. And once again, you can tell us what you thought of it. If you have any comics that you think we should check out. My backlog of what I've read is a lot smaller than Dakota's database of what he's read, I think, over the years. So I'm always interested if you say, oh, this is a really good storyline or good story arc of a character. I'm always looking for those things. And so,
yeah. Have you read 3 Jokers yet?
Yes. Yeah. And we had our first talk comics we did was on 3 Jokers. Have any of you read that yet? That was one we found really enjoyable, kind of a penultimate Batman Joker story. And so, yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. Hopefully you had fun listening to this one now. And let us know what you think of DCeased, and also let us know what you think about us. You can subscribe to us in all those places, like us in all those places, review us in all those places, shout out to us in all those places, DM us and all. Don't DM us. That's just weird. Guys, don't do that. But we would love to know what you think. And so we thank you for listening to this episode. This is Steven.
This is Dakota.
We'll see you next time.